It's been a bigger story in the last few days. Ken Ofori-Atta's arrest in the United States, Washington, to be very precise. It hasn't only grabbed international headlines, it's dominated local airwaves and the newspaper front pages also. It's been 7 days since he was arrested by the U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement, ICE, and he's in custody. As of tonight, he's still there in custody. A former finance minister spending time behind bars in a detention facility. It is fascinating, it's unprecedented, and there are a few additional details we are learning tonight that I will share with you, and then we'll go to the United States and get the exclusive view from the U.S. Our Ghana ambassador to the U.S. is my guest tonight. We're also going to be speaking to two U.S. immigration officers. They understand what is happening to him, and I'll be telling you some very fascinating, giving some very fascinating insight into his chances of winning his custody a case before a U.S. immigration judge. It is fascinating indeed, and this is the place to stay. We've already seen the details on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security website that tells us that indeed he's still there. 7 days ago when he was arrested, we're told that he was in ICE custody. When we checked tonight before we came on air, he was still in ICE custody. Why? Because we know he has a date to appear before the courts on the 20th of January, and that hearing may or may not determine his fate. And what are his chances? We'll analyze that pretty shortly. So this building in the background, according to Manasseh Zuriawuni, is where he was arrested. And a bit about this building. It is a fascinating building. It is one of the buildings that only the rich and wealthy can afford to stay there. If you check the websites that have been sort of selling homes and units and apartments in this particular complex, one two-bedroom apartment there was costing an average of $2 million. And this is the same place that also used to host Kamala Harris before she became the vice president. And so that is a very plush neighborhood. You need to be very rich. And Ken Ofori-Atta clearly has the means. This is somebody who worked on Wall Street, so he knows his way about in Washington. Washington and Wall Street in New York is just 3 hours away by car. Very plush neighborhood indeed. And he was in this building when he was picked up by ICE agents there. And this building tells a story. One of the things I want to do for you is to give you a Google Earth imagination of what may have happened to him, because the ICE agents, from what Manasseh tells us, waited for him in the vicinity of this building. Immediately he got out, they picked him up. And I want to show you that on the screens here, because when you look at that is the building in question there, and from the overheads that we know. And you look at the streets in front of it, and this is the street in front of it in this neighborhood here. He would have been in this building and has spent some time there. They wanted to arrest him before, but they couldn't, and they waited to the next day, according to Attorney General, who had told us this. And he may have come out of this entrance onto the street somewhere, and he was quickly nabbed by the ICE agents. And so this is an area where normally you will not see that kind of arrest, because the people who stay there are wealthy people. They are people who are powerful, and they have wealth. And often, people with that kind of background, the ICE agents will be pretty careful before you make a mistake, because it could actually be somebody with significant amount of power, amount of resources. But this is a country where the law is no respecter of persons. And so, of course, he was picked up there. You can see the rooftop, very plush indeed. And this is an area that you can imagine Ken Ofori-Atta would have stayed, enjoyed the atmosphere there in Washington, D.C. Now, the contrast is pretty fascinating, considering that he was staying in this apartment, which is very luxurious, to what happened after he was picked up on the streets here, which you see here. See what happened. Once they arrested him on the street, they drove him 131 kilometers to the Caroline Detention Center. So from the plush, luxurious surroundings of the Westlight apartment complex, to a detention center where you were sleeping in a very tiny space. Your toilet was right there with you, and your bed, bunk bed, was right there with you. So the contrast was quite astonishing indeed for somebody like Ken Ofori-Atta, who lives in wealth and luxury. His lifestyle there at the Westlight apartment complex told his own story, to this. That indeed tells a whole story. And this picture here tells 1,000 stories. From there, that building I showed you on the screen, to sleeping here. A short drive of some 1 hour, 30 minutes. His circumstances has changed dramatically on that day when he was picked up. Possibly sleeping in one of these bunk beds, possibly sharing that particular facility, this particular cell, this holding cell, with somebody else. Maybe sleeping on top of the bunk bed, and somebody may be there right underneath him. And if you notice very closely, this is his washing basin, and this is his toilet in that same cell. So you can see the contrast. This is a very difficult time for a finance minister who has led one of the longest serving finance ministers we had in this country, worked on Wall Street, to be sleeping in this facility, when an hour and 30 minutes before that, on the day he was arrested, he was in the Plush luxurious complex. This is one of the areas where the inmates will gather. Those being detained, the detainees will gather, and you can imagine Ken Ofori-Atta strolling or along the upper deck of this particular facility, or coming to the zone here and talking to people, right? Or whether he's keeping to himself in the various rooms that you see in the upper deck of the Caroline Detention Center. Just the pictures tell its own story. Now, one of the things that we also found that was interesting, as far as the Caroline Detention Center is concerned, is that the average daily population is 335 people. So this is a facility, and from the evidence that we've seen, last year when Trump started his immigration crackdown, it became choked. It was filled to overflowing because they had arrested and detained more people than the facility could hold. And it was, at one point, it was overcrowded by more than 10 people because it was designed for 335 people. They had more than that, 10 people extra. And that tells you a story. The average length of stay there was 47 days, and then you have here criminal detainees that Ken Ofori-Atta will be sharing this facility with. 29% of those who stay at the Caroline Detention Center are criminals. Pause for a second and imagine that you have your former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, now possibly spending time in the detention center, possibly with criminals, because 29% of them in this facility are criminals. Now, there's some interesting discrepancy, if you like, and contrast between the position of our current Attorney General and that of the lawyers for Ken Ofori-Atta. Because the lawyers of Ken Ofori-Atta had told us, and they issued a statement first, to say that, yeah, I mean, he had filed for adjustment of status, and that this is all very routine and this will be resolved very quickly. And then Attorney General came on Newsfile and said this. Dominic Ayine on Newsfile. This is what he told us when he came on the show, telling us about the specifics of why he was arrested and the situation with his visa that may have been revoked. Watch.
Are you responsible for Ofori-Atta's predicament in the U.S.? He's been in ICE detention for how many days now? It must be a very terrible situation for him.
Well, okay, so you know that even from day one, I didn't make this public, but I started investigating Ofori-Atta, all right? In fact, in his case, I'm doing it with, some foreign investigators that are tracking, all the offshore dealings and so on, all right? And then, of course, we are also doing our own investigations here. they are inconclusive as we speak. I mean, we have not, come to any conclusion. So
this is different from the SML.
It's different, totally different, and potentially mind blowing. But you know that I will not, give any details at this point in time. So I started working with the Americans in respect of Ofori-Atta long before OSP, came up with their announcement. Yeah, I started working with them, and I want Ghanaians to know that he just didn't overstay his visa. The visa was actually revoked. So it's not that Ofori-Atta, overstayed. So in July, the American government revoked, the State Department revoked his visa.
So that is Dominic Kane, the Attorney General. Now, if you check the ICE website, it details the circumstances under which an individual can be detained. And one of the key things that jumps at us was change in the visa holder's eligibility, which seemed to agree with the point expressed by the Attorney General that his visa was revoked. If indeed your visa had been revoked, then of course your circumstances has changed. Failure to comply with visa conditions, well, we don't know that for certain, that if that really applied to him. The public safety or national security concerns, we don't know that too. Fraud or misrepresentation. But here's the thing. The Attorney General says that he has been investigating him on some other issues. They're quite different from what the OSP has been investigating him on. So we don't know whether indeed the revocation must have been triggered by something. The Attorney General seemed to suggest that the visa may have been revoked because of the separate investigations that he's pursuing. Not for certain, but at least there's a suggestion there that that's the case. But certainly, change in visa holders' eligibility, he may have indeed hold the valid visa, but if it's revoked, that then throws up the question. And the question that you need to also ask is, if indeed was revoked in July of 2025, why did the U.S. Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, wait until January of 2026 to effect an arrest? Raise the question. We don't have an answer to that, but the immigration lawyers in the U.S. who are joining us maybe can give us some clarity on this subject pretty shortly. And then also, one of the things that I want to do is also give you a bird's eye view of the detention facility that he's in, which is what you see there on your screen. So it is quite a vast area. If just take a tour there using Google Earth. That's the current detention center. That is where you have the entrance. That's the entrance where he would have been brought and then he would have been ushered in. He would have been either in these quarters or any of these. It's a huge area holding almost 400 people. And at one point last year, it was full, but they were still sending people there. At one point, there were complaints that had been sent there about their management of detainees, including the fact that some of the detainees are allowed to work to earn money. Some of the detainees were allowed to work overtime more than the hours that legally they were supposed to work. So that's the enclave there. That's where he's been held. Ken Ofori-Atta is being held, driven 1 hour 30 minutes from his luxurious apartment in Washington all the way to this particular center there, where he's currently still in the custody of ICE. Now, to the point that I need to make also, we're beginning to understand a few things. There are two main, if you like, conditions that ICE itself has publicized, for which reason they will hold you. When ICE can detain an individual in question, is violation of the U.S. immigration laws, broadly is what I listed, right? And then individuals with final orders of removal. Ken Ofori-Atta doesn't qualify here because that is subject to still some court hearings. But certainly on the violation of the U.S. immigration laws, he's definitely reason why he is now being detained in the USA. Now, so what is his path? There is a window though for Ken, and some have suggested that he actually may have been trying to take advantage of this window. Trump has introduced what he called the Trump Gold Card. If you have enough money, you can buy the U.S. citizenship. $15,000 to process, $1 million contribution, and then you have expedited permanent residency. So this is a path that Ken Ofori-Atta definitely can take. he is definitely worth far more than $1 million. This is a man who's worked on Wall Street. He has money. Former investment banker, Morgan Stanley. So he's definitely a man who is worth far more than that. He can come up with $1 million very easily, we believe. Co-founder of DataBank, Ghana Finance Minister. He has the wealth. He has the means to use his path. And whether or not his alleged violation of the U.S. immigration laws, if indeed his visa was revoked because of something he did, may excuse and may be a reason why this may not be something that the U.S. immigration may consider. It's a whole different conversation as far as this is concerned. But definitely he has the means to do this. And he has assembled quite the list of lawyers to defend him. The former U.S. Attorney General himself is his lead counsel. According to the Attorney General, our own Attorney General, he's told us this last week when he appeared on Newsfile, that John Ashcroft, we know him. He was former governor of Missouri. He was a Republican political lobbyist. But most importantly, and this is where I found pretty interesting, he endorsed Trump in 2016. So if you're looking for somebody who may have the ear of Donald Trump, then you go for a former Attorney General, a Republican, who endorsed him. And Trump, you know, is one of those people who has a significant ego. And this guy stroked it nicely in 2016. He may be speaking to Trump and in Trump's ear about Ghana's former finance minister. It is not coincidence that Ken Ofori-Atta has gone for John Ashcroft. But again, it tells you this former Attorney General will not come cheap. Very expensive indeed. But Ken obviously has the means. But he has also gone for another renowned lawyer. And this is no mean lawyer in the United States. He's a partner at White Law, Washington, D.C. We have reached him. He says he's not going to be speaking on the matter just now. Once we get him and circumstances change, we may bring him on the show and ask him a few questions. Anayat Kwasimi, former Afghan aviation minister, so he himself is a minister, a former minister, just like Ken Ofori-Atta is, and former legal advisor to Afghan president. So he comes to the table also with significant gravitas and background. So note the common thread between him and Ashcroft. Both of them were senior government officials. They held ministerial positions. He, Ashcroft, was Attorney General of the United States. He, Anayat, was Aviation Minister of Afghanistan. So that tells you something. He's been very deliberate in the choice of his lawyers. Now, the hearing, we know, has been scheduled for the 20th of January. But the question we must ask ourselves is, what are the chances that this hearing may produce an outcome that sets him free and gives him the permission to live in the U.S. legally? It's very slim, I must say. Now, look at the data we found from the ICE website and ICE data that we've been poring over. Between January 28th, 2025 to January 8th, 2026, there have been a total of 352,590 arrests under Trump, right? Remember that he was sworn in January 20 in the US. Out of the total, they have deported 352,380. In other words, almost everybody they arrest, they deport. Almost everybody. It just leaves you, give or take, 200 plus people who managed to make a case to stay in the US after they've been arrested. And currently they have 68,990 people in detention, which includes Ken Ofori-Atta. So pause for a second. This is the figure that struck me. 99.94% of all those arrested by ICE under Trump were deported. 99.94% of all individuals, regardless of status, once arrested, you are deported. So that tells you Ken Ofori-Atta's chances of actually making a case to stay in the US after this arrest. And this is pure data, by the way. And you can find this on the ICE database, tells the story. 352,000 590 people arrested in the last year. They deported 352,380. That is 99.94%. You can actually argue, if you ask the question, what are Ofori-Atta's chances of actually winning his case before the immigration judge post the detention? Is less than 1%. Less than 1% that he actually gets to convince the immigration judge and the ICE agents that he must stay legally. And our immigration lawyers will weigh on this number. It's really fascinating when you think about that Trump, no joke, once you're arrested, you're almost certainly going to be deported. And you know, he's not only facing predicaments in the US, he's Ghana's most wanted. 28 charges filed by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. You have offshore financial dealings that are currently under review by the AG. And he told us that on Samsung's show on Newsfile, that he's looking into the offshore dealings of Ken Ofori-Atta. What that means, we don't know. But that something may have influenced the decision to revoke a valid visa. Well, the thing is, he is one of 166 Ghanaians expected to be deported now by the US. But he has a chance on the 20th of January for his case to be heard. My guests are joining me. First, we're going to be speaking to the ambassador to the US in Washington, Victor Smith, will join us. And then we're going to speak to two female immigration lawyers from the US to give us some insights into what might be the outcome of this immigration hearing that we're expecting now on the 20th. We can bring you the details of that all here on Joy, on the JoyNews channel, and also on Joy FM. Stay with me. After this, my guest will join me. It's always brought to you, PM Express, by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Pepsodent Cavity Fighter, toothpaste, Syntex Tanks also. Ghana, let's talk water tanks. Do you know the secret to real water storage? It's simple. It's if it doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it is not the correct tank for you. That's right. The tortoise tank, the Syntex Tanks, is a champion of water tanks. It is strong and durable and built to handle our Ghanaian weather, rain or shine. Syntex Tanks are strong, they're tough. Now, Pepsodent Cavity Fighter is one that I always recommend for you, because before you sleep, you need to grab that. It's the guarantee for healthier teeth, leading tooth decay issues that you always will have because you're eating will not be an issue that you have to contend with. Brushing your teeth every morning and night with Pepsodent Cavity Fighter gives you the teeth, the protection that you need, leaving your teeth with 10 times stronger teeth. Pepsodent Cavity Fighter is fortified with fluoride and microcalcium ingredients, sealing tiny invisible teeth. And that is a recommendation that I make to you tonight. I'm delighted to say that I've just been joined by Victor Smith. He's joining us from Washington, I believe. He is ambassador to the United States of America, and he joins us via Zoom. Also joining us is Jonelle Ocloo. He's a U.S. immigration lawyer, also joins us on Zoom tonight, also from the U.S. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time here on Newsnight. I want to bring in first Victor Smith, because Mr. Smith, you issued a statement from your office last week when this happened. I want to take you back to the day the arrest happened. How did you get to know of this when Ken Ofori-Atta was arrested at the consul there, and what did you decide to do when you were informed?
Thank you very much for having me on this program. Yes, I got to know about the arrest on the 7th of January, very early hours of the morning, when I got a call from, I think I actually got a call from a friend. I wasn't sure, so I called the Attorney General, Mr. Ayine, Dr. Ayine, and he confirmed that the FBI had been in touch with him, that they picked up the former minister and one other. And we talked a little bit, and he was always in the picture, when it wasn't, the ICE did the picking up, but the FBI were also involved If you recall, we had I'm not sure whether you know that one, but we had an extradition request from the government of Ghana, which we passed on to the Department of Justice. This was on the 29th of December. And I believe that acting on the request, they moved in on our brother Ken.
So that is a very important clarity. First, that the FBI was involved, and second, that based on your briefing, this particular arrest may have something to do with what he's wanted for in Ghana and the extradition.
I suspect so. The ICE did the arrest, but a few hours ago, I was also informed the FBI were involved. And of course, that sort of corroborated with what the Attorney General told me, that the FBI had informed him that they had picked him up.
Okay.
So
were you
I
also,
suspect. Yeah,
yeah, you suspect. You suspect that.
I suspect it's a combination of these two factors. ICE normally would pick you for immigration issues.
Okay.
But then, of course, when the FBI comes in, then there must be some criminality or Interpol police request. So the red alert comes in there. So the combination of the two of them, convinces me that Ghana government had requested for this man to be brought in to help us, if you like, unravel some issues that have been brought against him as a former minister.
Were you,
so,
were you also briefed about the revocation of his valid visa?
No, the Attorney General mentioned that to me. The extent of my involvement at this stage was when he had been picked up. I discussed it with the consular officers of my embassy, and we decided to make a request to make sure that he was being treated properly as the protocols, international protocols. And so we requested, and they agreed in principle to allow us to come and visit. But just before we set out, the ICE people came again and said the detainee had refused to meet with us without his lawyers. That was the initial response from the detention center. And they were going to go back to him and probably request that his lawyers appear so we can come and verify for ourselves that he's being treated fairly and not being denied, for instance, his medication and all that. But we waited for a while. After about a few hours, they came back to us to say the detainee, being the ex-minister, had refused now to see us under any circumstance. So that was the end of the road for me and the embassy. So
the consular officers didn't even manage to get to the detention facility. This was all a phone conversation with yourselves and the ICE.
No, they came. The ICE came here. The representative came to my office. And they had indicated initially in the phone conversation that they had cleared the way for us to go. So I got myself ready with my consular officer. And just before we set off, the consular officer walks into my office and says, the ICE people are here. And I said, are we leaving? They said, no. They said there's a problem. So I invited them to my office. And they said this to me, that the detainee is unwilling to have us visit him without his lawyers. And therefore, they asked me to hold on until they're able to sort out the lawyer's presence, with him. After about 2-3 hours, they came back and said he was adamant. He wasn't going to now, under no circumstance, did he want to see us.
How did you react to that?
Well, a bit of a disappointment, because I know Ken personally. He may not be my friend, but I know him personally. And nobody had visited him at the time the ICE were discussing this with me. And I found, as being a Ghanaian and being our responsibility, so to speak, in a host country, I felt that if we had had the opportunity to at least hear about if he had some concerns, for us to probably try and assist in that respect. So shutting the door in our face and not wanting to see us under no circumstance was a bit unfortunate.
I mean, since this incident, have you had any further information about the conditions of his detention?
Yes, the ICE people confirmed that he was all right. Initially, they had medical people to determine whether he was fit to be held in a detention center, and they were convinced and were sure that he was okay. He was on medication, but he wasn't seeing any doctor at the time. And he had his medication, so he could be put in the detention center.
So in other words, since he was arrested, the ICE itself had examined him to determine whether he was medically fit to be in detention.
Well, they had cause for him to be, assessed by the medical personnel, not themselves. Because I've been to one of those detention centers before. They have very, very fully manned medical center for the detainees. So they just, one thing I like about the ICE's approach is that they don't want people to put stories on them. So they were very welcoming and saying that come and see for yourself, so you can be a witness whether we have done anything, towards the detainee. And so I respected what they had said to me, that he had been assessed and was given the all green, to be held in that detention center. If he had any serious medical conditions, maybe they would have referred him into a medical facility outside the detention center.
Do you know if Ken Ofori-Atta was in the U.S. at the time of his arrest with his family? Because we know the building. If you see the screen there, at least Manasseh has given us a bit more detail about where he was arrested and where he was staying. I'm pretty sure you would have that information too. Do you know any other details around who he was with, where he was staying, and what may have happened on that particular day?
The ICE gave me the information that he was picked up from his home.
Okay.
They were very clear about that one. They did not have any doubts about it, that we took him from his home.
Do you know if he was staying alone or he was with family?
I wouldn't know that. They didn't tell me that one.
Okay. This obviously is not something you are alien to. I mean, we've seen the numbers. I think there are almost 200 Ghanaians who may also currently be facing challenges such as this. Is this different from what you're used to? Does the Ken Ofori-Atta, former finance minister, his status and profile, has it changed anything for you in terms of what you know happens in these matters? Or this is very normal from what you become used to?
Well, they view Ken Ofori-Atta as a high-profile case. That they have made it clear to me.
Okay. Because
he was an ex-finance minister, and even though there was an extradition, they knew, dealing with the Attorney General in Ghana, that this is a high-profile personality. And his visa issues, I can't go into it because I didn't know, but I know one thing, that if your visa expires, normally they give you a 6 months visa when you enter the US with a 5-year B1, B2 visa. So they will grant you 6 months, and people normally travel out and come back in. My little information I had earlier on was that he traveled to the UK and came back into the US. As to what happened with his visa, I cannot talk too much about, except that I was told that by November 29th or thereabouts, his visa was no longer valid. And so it meant he was here illegally. His status was he did not have a visa to be in this country. But also hearing from other people, they were making attempts to, if you like, extend his stay or vary the visa to make him remain here until further notice. But I don't know where that request has reached. But before the ICE move in, they are certain that you don't have a visa in this country.
Yeah.
That's when they move in.
Mr. Smith, please stay with me because Jonelle Ocloo is a U.S. immigration lawyer, also joins us. There's a few things you've said are fascinating. I want to put to her to get some clarity about, but also get some legal education on the back of what we're learning tonight. And Jonelle, thanks for joining us from the U.S. I believe this is something you're very familiar with as far as the ICE detention of foreigners are concerned. Have you been involved in cases such as this and represented individuals who have been arrested in such a manner?
Okay. First of all, let me say thank you so much for having me on your program this evening. I have been a U.S. immigration lawyer for over 20 years now, and I can speak to what is typically done for detained cases, deportation cases. But if I can say clearly, as His Excellency, the Ambassador has stated, Mr. Ofori-Atta's case is clearly not a typical one. I know you mentioned...
Explain that. What makes it a non-typical case?
Oh, sure. It's the fact that he's a high-profile personality, a former minister in the Ghanaian government. I heard the statistic you gave about how many Ghanaians are currently detained, how many Ghanaians are up for deportation. But I can tell you quite certainly that he's not your regular Ghanaian in detention. And you yourself, when you were talking about his legal team that he has hired to defend him, I mean, here, as we say in the U.S., he has really lawyered up. Yeah. Okay, he is really lawyered up. When you see the lawyers that he's hired, former American AG, that is an indication of somebody who he's not going easily. So I was thinking about that when you mentioned the statistic about 99% of the people who go into detention end up deported. Trust me, less than 0 point whatever percent have a former American AG as their lawyer. So he's definitely not your typical case. And
this is something that Ambassador Victor Smith said that I want to pick your thoughts on.
Sure.
He discloses that FBI was somehow involved in the ICE arrest. What do you read into that? I mean, what can you tell us about the fact that FBI was involved? Does it change anything?
It does. To me, it's an indication that this isn't simply about a visa overstay.
Okay.
Right? If it was just a visa overstay, this visa revocation overstay, I dealt with a number of cases with, say, international students, maybe who they had their student visa revoked, that sort of thing. But no, I feel that the fact that the FBI was involved is an indication of what was said previously, that this had to do with the extradition request.
Okay.
And that is why the FBI is involved.
And what also do you make of our Attorney General's disclosure that his visa was revoked? He says the FBI confirmed to him, he says, an authority, and I have no basis to doubt him because the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. How common is that your valid visa is revoked by the United States?
Okay. Prior to the current administration, U.S. administration, that was incredibly uncommon. It rarely ever happened. Typically, the visa revocation only happened when you were back in your home country, okay, or you had specifically committed a crime in the U.S., that sort of thing. That's when these type of visa revocations happen. However, with the current administration here in the US, we have seen that happening. We have seen people having their visas revoked while they're here in the United States. I gave the example of international students. So people, for example, who are here on F1 student visas, if the government found that, oh, okay, some of their online activity was something that they find objectionable, then the US State Department may revoke their visas. Same thing with people who are here on valid work visas. Okay, so all of that to say, in this basically the new administration we have here in the U.S., that actually has been happening. So I would say someone who is here in the United States on say B1, B2, they're seeking medical treatment. Typically, they would be able to apply to extend their stay depending on how the treatment is going, what the physicians say, the surgeons say. However, there's an exception, of course, if you have an individual who, his home country is seeking to extradite him for investigation or further prosecution.
And there's something I found interesting, and then this comes back to the FBI's involvement here. You suggested that if the FBI is involved, then it's not just a case of overstaying your visa. It may be, as the ambassador suggests, it relates to the extradition. But the extradition path is, correct me if I'm wrong, legally very distinct from the immigration and possible deportation path. And so if the FBI was involved and it's an extradition request, why would the FBI get the ICE involved and, let's assume this, based on what we know so far, revoke his valid visa so that it becomes an immigration matter? I mean, can you square that circle for me?
Okay, sure. I can say that it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Okay.
This might be a way to basically for them to be able to tackle it from various angles. Meaning, yes, ICE deals with immigration and customs enforcement, immigration. However, the ICE, they cooperate with local police, state police, and essentially the FBI in many ways is like a national, right? National law enforcement for the United States. So when you have something where you're dealing with a foreign country's government, it would certainly be conducted through the FBI. So all of that to say that it could be that they're tackling the issue from multiple respects. Like one, this idea of visa revoked, visa overstay, but then at the same time responding to a foreign government's request for extradition.
Okay. So this is just possibly could be a strategy. You have the extradition, but you also then needs to go through the immigration hearings. And the extradition hearing is also separate, could actually still happen.
Yes. So if he's not caught in one, he could be caught in the other, essentially. Sure.
Go on, please go on.
No, and I'll say this, and actually, if you don't mind bringing up your previous screen that you had up when you had his applied for adjustment of status and the visa revocation.
Let's show that on a screen for Jonelle there to
for
see.
Your viewers.
Yes.
Yeah, and then perhaps if I can explain that, because the thing is, for visa immigration alone, okay, for visa immigration alone, his chances of actually being removed from the United States, especially given the legal team that he has, it's very small, right? So I would say it's the flip of what you say when you said that, oh, most people who are in ICE detention, 99%, they end up removed from the US. No, he would definitely be in the 1%. The reason being, okay, first of all, you mentioned here that he has filed for adjustment of status. let me say this. Generally, in order for someone to file for adjustment of status, they need to be in status at the time that the adjustment is filed. I do not know the full facts of his case, so I don't know when his application for adjustment of status specifically was filed. I would be curious to know, was it before or after his visa was revoked? Because if they filed for adjustment of status at the time that his visa was revoked and he was already considered an overstay, okay, if that's the case, then it's possible that the immigration judge may find that the adjustment of status filing was improper. Right? Improper, invalid adjustment of status. But I don't know the timing of the filing. The other thing is adjustment of status. Generally, you are not, okay, as a foreign national in the United States, you're not entitled to just file for adjustment. It has to be based, okay, it has to be based on a specific immigrant petition. So then the question I have is, what is his basis for adjustment of status? Is it possible, what was mentioned earlier in your program, that, is it possible that he's one of, the first to apply for one of these Trump gold cards? Is that the basis of his adjustment of status filing? I specifically, I don't know the facts of his family situation, but I wonder, does he have adult children who are perhaps hold U.S. citizenship? If that's the case, is it possible that one of his adult children has sponsored him? And through that means he's filing for adjustment of status. Another question I would have is, in any part of this, it hasn't been stated. All I've heard is adjustment of status is at any point, has he filed for asylum, political asylum? So,
and another point that his lawyers, when they issued this statement and they made a disclosure that he has filed for adjustment of status, said this is routine, is it?
Well, it is routine if you have a valid immigrant petition. So that is the question, is what is the basis of his adjustment of status? Is it, as I said, the family relationship, or is it, through some employment means, the Trump gold card? That is one of the possible employment means for adjustment of status.
So there's a point you make, then I want to return to the statistics that we got from the ICE database, which is that in 1 year, 28th of January to the 8th of January, 28th of January 2025 to 8th of January 2026, out of the total arrests of 352,590, a total of 352,380 were deported. And if you do the maths, it's 99.94%. You say, based on everything else you are reading and hearing and your experience, Ofori-Atta could be part of the 0.6% who may actually be arrested and get to stay in the U.S.
Certainly. Let me explain how that could possibly play out. You mentioned that he has his immigration hearing coming up on January 20th.
Yes.
That's a week from tomorrow. Okay, so he has an immigration hearing coming up from a week from tomorrow. Now, I don't know. It is true that the current U.S. administration, sometimes they do these expedited removals, okay, expedited removals from the U.S. But once again, given the legal team that Mr. Ofori-Atta has, given his legal team, it is quite likely, I'm sure, that they could file a number of things. For example, they could file a writ of habeas corpus with the U.S. federal courts, like basically stating that their client is being unjustly held. Okay, that's even before getting to this January 20th date, that their client is being unjustly held. When the date his hearing comes up before the immigration judge, they could certainly request for his release on bond. Okay, that perhaps they could pay a bond as long as they could show that he's not a flight risk. And it seems that's the case, because it's the opposite, right? He's not trying to leave the US. He wants to stay in the US. So they could show the immigration judge that, okay, he's not going to leave, and then request that he be released on parole. If he's released on parole, it's possible that the immigration lawyer could even ask the judge to give him, either something like, for example, they have these electronic ankle monitors. Even that one is quite severe. Sometimes they can request, okay, give him a curfew, in lieu of keeping him in detention. One thing this is clear, which you've said, is Mr. Ofori-Atta is a person of means, right? He's a person of great financial means. So someone in that position, I believe, and given the legal team that he has, they will find ways for him to not have to be deported. So all of that to say, that I think would be the reason for the FBI to be involved, right? To show that this is more than just an issue of possible visa.
Fascinating indeed. And doesn't matter that John Ashcroft, the former Attorney General, in 2016 endorsed Trump. And it was very, very public. If you read about it, Trump loved him at the time because he was a significant player in the Republican Party. He served under Bush. Does that hold any currency in the U.S. jurisprudence and legal system? And knowing who Trump is?
Sure. I'll say this. I mean, the United States is a nation of laws, okay? So just simply having the former AG as your lawyer is not an automatic out, okay? It's not an automatic out. And I would also say this. These are actually competing interests. I personally do not know anything about Mr. Ashcroft's connection, okay, personal connection with the current U.S. President, Donald Trump. But if in fact, the Ghanaian government, Ghana's AG, has been in touch with, FBI, which is Department of Justice, right? I'm sure they've also stated their case to the Department of Justice, which includes the U.S.'s current AG, right? So it would be, I don't know the position of the U.S.'s current AG versus, the Attorney General from, John Ashcroft for the Attorney General during the George W. Bush administration, which at this point was, over 15 or more years ago.
And really fascinating. Jonelle, please stay with me. I want to bring in Ambassador Victor Smith back into the conversation. Ambassador, from everything we were hearing, it's very, very possible that 20th doesn't resolve this because the legal team he's assembled, as Jonelle is just telling us, is very, very strong, and they have a series of things they can file to frustrate the process and to get their clients there. I know he said he doesn't want to engage the embassy and the consular services under any circumstance, but he's still a citizen of the Republic. He's waived his right for consular representation. Would you still be there on the 20th to see what happens?
Well, my information is that on the 20th, he may not be in court himself. It might be done virtual because the FBI don't want him to be moved about too much. Now, it will be in front of an immigration judge, and if the immigration judge has no basis to keep him here longer, he'll be on the next flight to Ghana. That's what I know.
And explain that. In the cases that you've become accustomed to in the last 1 year, once the judge says you don't have a case, what then happens? What chain of events kicks in immediately?
Some of the detainees who we've come into contact with had no document. They were undocumented. So we had to try and prove that they were Ghanaians before they would make that determination to fly them out. So then sometimes they go to court and we're not able to finish that matter because we cannot prove where they are coming from. But in this particular special case, they have 3 of his passports, and all of them show clearly that he's a Ghanaian.
They have three.
So-
They have 3 passports of
3
Ofori-Atta.
passports. Yeah, but they're all like, there's I believe he has what is it? The new type. The
biometric type.
chip embedded.
The chip
and all
embedded.
that. Yeah, they said 3 passports, and each one had the same details. So they don't believe, they have no reason to believe that he had another nationality.
I mean, were
Okay.
all the 3 passports valid, or these are the passports that had expired at various times?
Well, that was not told to me, but they said 3 passports, and none of them was any other country but Ghana's passport. So I take it that that matter is settled. He's a Ghanaian.
Okay.
Okay, so there won't be a problem before the immigration judge to determine his nationality. Now, if there's no basis to keep him here longer because his visa is out of status, he doesn't have a visa to remain in this country, that is the easiest way to take him back to his country.
Okay. Do you also know if he holds the citizenship of any other country apart from Ghana?
I don't know. Well, initially there was like a suspicion, but there's no evidence so far. As far as ICE is concerned, they haven't had any evidence that he has some other passport, also has some other details other than what is in his passports that they've seen.
Do you have any information on the extradition request? And I believe you said at the beginning that this your outfit, your office may have been activated in the process of making the request. Do you have any details from the U.S. government on that part of the Ofori-Atta's problems?
No, we just were asked by Ghana government to submit the documents that they brought in. They have put the document together with the U.S. Embassy in Accra and everything, and they brought the document for me to deliver to the Department of Justice, which we did on the 29th of December. So they have not come back to us to say anything to us about him. So the next thing we heard was the arrest. So at this point in time, I cannot say categorically that it's the extradition thing which is being kicked in. But like the lawyer Jonelle was saying, it's possible with the FBI going in, it must be a Department of Justice directive. So this is where we are now, but the chances are that he may be asked to assist Ghana government to unravel all those mysteries about the charges that are being leveled against him.
And Jonelle, typically, how long does it take for a case like this to be resolved, to be had and resolved?
As I said, it's possible that his legal team could look for all sorts of ways to keep him in the country.
Okay.
If they file the writ of habeas corpus, that would be heard by a federal judge here in U.S. Okay. If he fails at that level, and I'll be honest, as I said, he's not your ordinary, ordinary detainee. It's possible then he'll ask his lawyers to appeal that, right, to the federal appeals court. And barring that, he could also ask them to appeal it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, that's not to say the U.S. Supreme Court would necessarily accept to hear his case. Okay, they could decline to hear his case, but nevertheless, that would be more time that he would buy for himself. Yes.
And spare a few moments to talk to me about the Crown Detention Center. I don't know if you've been there before representing the clans. What are the conditions there?
I think in the beginning of your show, I saw when
the pictures,
you were showing people. I would say currently the detention center is not any place that anyone would want to be. under normal conditions, and especially now with the ramp up in deportations here from the United States, really the detention centers, they are overcrowded. It's said, oh, two people in a room. Quite honestly, it could end up more than, two detainees in a room. Now, to say this, as His Excellency, the Ambassador, has stated, it seems that ICE is aware that Mr. Ofori-Atta is, a special case, right? And so it's quite possible that, he may be given special treatment that your ordinary detainee is not afforded. So it's quite possible that if they are aware, that he's a special case, that he could get better accommodations than what is normal, which right now are, overcrowded conditions.
Overcrowded conditions. And the data last year, I noticed that some actually filed petitions about, particularly the current detention center. There's another one, I think Farmville, also in Virginia. Two of them had issues around what you're just talking about, the overcrowding that they had seen there. Jonelle, please stay with me. I want to take a quick break. When I return, Ambassador Victor Smith will talk to me about, well, the Ofori-Atta case isn't the only case that he's had to deal with. And as I indicated, he will update us on the data, but the last check, 166 other Ghanaians were expected to be deported. I've seen advertised that he's going to be engaging with the Ghanaian diaspora in the United States on a host of issues. I'll ask him to weigh in on that for me, on what we can expect from himself and the team there as it relates to dealing with ICE, with all the other Ghanaians who are currently possibly in detention, awaiting deportation, including Ken Ofori-Atta. Stay with me. It's live here on News live here on PM Expresses on the JoyNews channel. News 90 is on radio, my other show on Joy 99.7 FM. And my guest on PM Express tonight, Victor Smith is the Ghana ambassador to the U.S. Also, Jonelle Ocloo is a U.S. immigration lawyer who also joined us with some really fascinating, deep insight into what may or may not happen to Ken Ofori-Atta in the U.S. now that he is in detention. He's also given us an insight into the conditions under which he may be kept currently at the Carolina Detention Center. It says it's, and the data actually backs that up, it's overflowing, it's at overcapacity currently, and because of the Trump's crackdown, fundamentally, and that's not a place that anybody would like to stay, but maybe his profile may exclude him from staying in the same circumstances as all the other detainees there. And I'm talking about detainees. I want to bring in Victor Smith. Mr. Smith, talking about what you're dealing with currently, because we know that across the length and breadth of the United States, ICE agents are raiding homes and arresting foreigners they suspect or have evidence to support their case that they may be there illegally. We understand that many of them are Ghanaians and may have been already been arrested and are in detention. The last time we checked, I believe it was 166, we're told, who may be in this particular category. Can you please update us on the number of Ghanaians who may find themselves in the same soup as Ken Ofori-Atta?
Well, thank you. The last time I was told about numbers by the ICE was 193. I got about 193 at that time. I don't know whether in between they've sort of shipped out some of them already. So definitely less than 200 are in detention, but in different parts of the United States. When I visited Pennsylvania, I went to the detention center a couple of days before Christmas. I think I saw 11 of them there. And I had the opportunity to chat with them. That particular detention center was not overcrowded as such, but in a dormitory setting, you would say they had about 12 people in like a cubicle with their bunk beds, and you could see their showers and their WCs from where I was standing. I was not in there, but I could see through the glass door, and they were all sitting, around and having lunch at the time. So it's not a pleasant thing for our former minister to be in a situation like this, but they do not deal with people on status basis in terms of status in life, except where you have a communicable disease or you're violent. Then they isolate you. That is what the ICE people told us. Otherwise, every detainee is held under the same conditions, except where you have that problem, have a disease or something. And then, of course, we were taken to the hospital. They had a clinic, let me put it as a clinic, a small hospital within the facility. And some of the patients were being looked after. Everywhere was clean, as it could possibly, be. I've been to Ghana's prisons in Nsawam, if I may do that comparison. This is a very clean environment to make sure that people don't run into diseases. But it's still a detention center. I think it was an old prison, but it's a new facility. Everything's quite modern. And I had the opportunity to sit and chat with the detainees. Most of them were undocumented. Unfortunately, almost all of them, about 10 of them were undocumented. But they were fighting their cases. They had lawyers and things going in. So some had been there for 10 months.
Wow.
They were fighting their cases, So what could one do? They didn't have documents to show that they're from Ghana, except that they spoke Twi with us. But of course, the American, those who were supervising or policing us, if I may put it that way, did not understand what we were talking. So we left them to fight their cases. They want to be left alone to fight their cases. They didn't complain of being maltreated or anything, except that they want to fight their cases and remain in the United States. They didn't know how they're going to do that, actually.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we sort of encouraged them, reassured them about developments at home. We told them there were opportunities being put in place by the current administration. It was possible if they came back, they can start life afresh. There were big opportunities with the 24-hour economy and all that to get them jobs and bigger opportunities for them to eventually one day when they are self-sufficient to be able to travel back into the States or visit the States or any other country for that matter. We give them some words of, if you like, consolation.
And the 190, almost 200 cases, are any of them nearing conclusion? And should we expect any deportation anytime soon this year? Do you have any information?
Oh, yeah. They've been doing it. And once they establish that they're Ghanaians, sometimes they make us interview some of them. And if we establish that they're Ghanaians, then they are on their way out. Okay. Because they don't survive in front of the judge. There is nothing else for you to remain here. Because first of all, you are undocumented. So they're not able to even establish when you came into the country. And some of them told us, the unapproved routes that were used to enter the US and all that. You could tell they are hustlers, these ones. But there are some too who may have fallen foul of the law for one reason or the other. In the case of, I haven't been to that current Caroline detention center, not yet. At the time that I was looking for one of them places to go to, this was not mentioned to me, so I had to go to Pennsylvania to do that. Our current VIP being held by the ICE people, that is the former minister. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't know what case they're going to try and bring before the judge, but if it's going to just be immigration trying to change status, I don't hold much hope for him in that respect. But once the FBI involved, there's a strong possibility that the government of the United States appreciate where Ghana government is coming from. They appreciate that ours is a law-abiding country and that he'll be given a fair trial with the charges and they brought against him. So I suspect strongly he should man it up. He should go face them, tell them what he knows, tell them the truth. The truth might set him free. You never know. Not all charges might stick. This is my only advice if I ever had the opportunity to sit with him. Hanging around here and being kept in the cells, it's not on. I mean, he's bigger than that.
And Jonelle, on the bigger picture of the other Ghanaians in that same situation, we just heard that from the ambassador talk about the many Ghanaians. In some cases, they've been fighting for 8 months. And I retorted because it just gives you a picture of this is not an open and shut matter at all. I mean, some people are painted it as if this is possibly going to be resolved very soon. If one ordinary, undocumented Ghanaian could try his case for 8 months, you could actually now begin to appreciate that Ken Ofori-Atta with this super team of lawyers could do even longer, right? And then it comes down to the conditions under which it's been held, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, clearly, on a bigger picture, when you look at the big picture there, some national to national conversation needs to happen, just to the point of how the individuals are being kept in the detention centers. You talked about the overcrowding and the humanity and the dignity with which they are being treated. From what you know, is this something that can be an issue? And should the government of Ghana representatives do more?
I'll say this. I think that His Excellency, the Ambassador, he is doing for the Ghanaians who are currently being detained. He spoke himself that he went to visit some of them before Christmas. Now, for each case, I know that we'll say, 166 Ghanaians, but these are individual cases, right? Each case with its own set of facts. Everybody is an individual. Everybody's case is unique. How they got to the United States and how it is that they ended up in detention. For some of the people who are in detention, it's possible that they have outstanding deportation orders from before. As I mentioned, once you are in detention and you get your opportunity before the immigration judge, there are various what we call avenues of relief. That's basically various reasons of defense, like why should the judge allow you to remain in the United States? And there are so many different reasons. You know, it's quite possible some of these 166 Ghanaians, some of them could say, I'm married to a United States citizen. Okay, my U.S. citizen spouse has filed for me. Some of that, so there are a whole variety of reasons. I can't comment on the whole group of them, but I would say that His Excellency Ambassador Smith certainly, yes, he has let the Ghanaians know that the Ghana Embassy is there to provide consular services to them. But one thing that has to be noted is consular services is not, legal defense, right? Yeah. They each have to get their own lawyer if what they are looking for is legal defense to remain in the country. And just as you've stated, everybody is unique. For some of these people, a quick, return to Ghana may be better for them. Some people may determine that, no matter what, they are going to fight until the very end to try to remain in the United States. Everybody's case is unique. Everybody's life situation is unique.
Jonelle, thank you very much. Victor Smith, I'm grateful that you joined us with the insights from Washington, D.C. Enjoy the rest of the evening.